I'm Ashley Winans from Boys and Girls Clubs of the Midlands here in Omaha, Nebraska. Thank you so much for joining us today. We will be talking about lessons learned from a $25 million campaign. And Boys and Girls Clubs in the Midlands is in the process of going through our capital campaign right now. We're about halfway through, and I've learned a lot through this process, so hopefully I can share a few tidbits with you. Whether you're either thinking about entering into a capital campaign, or even if you're not, hopefully some of the things you'll be able to walk with today around board management, fundraising, marketing, that type of thing. Hopefully you'll get a little nuts and bolts from that. Just to give you some background, Boys and Girls Clubs of the Midlands is, we have 11 clubs, and we have 3 different kinds of clubs, and that kind of comes into play later on as I talk about our campaign. But just to give you some background, we have standalone clubs, standalone facilities where we transport kids from various schools to the club. We also have programming where we go into a school and use all school space and use the classrooms, the gym, the cafeteria, that kind of thing, but we don't actually have club space. And then the third type is it's a club attached to a school. And we have separate club space, but we also get the benefits and efficiencies of using the school space. So they let us use their gym, their cafeteria, sometimes some classrooms, a media center, that type of thing. And so with these 3 types of clubs, our senior team went through the ALP project process, and we came up with the idea that we wanted to double the number of kids we serve through that. And we came back and talked to our board and tried to figure out the logistics on actually how we were going to do that. And with that, we found that we were going to add some new clubs, and we found that the schools, or the clubs that attached to a school, alleviated a lot of challenges for us. And so that's the model we've gone with, and that's what the campaign is based on. And so today, we'll focus on building a capital campaign committee, fundraising and prospects, and then marketing and communications. And this is just a few of the tidbits throughout the campaign that some highlights, I guess I should say, that we found were quite a bit of a process. The Boys and Girls Clubs of the Midlands went through a capital campaign back in 07, 08, and when I came on board to do this campaign, now I didn't have a lot of resources to go to, and so being able to really plan out and keep track of everything you're doing as you're going through the campaign not only helps you through the process now, but if you ever have to do a campaign in the future, you have something to go back to. So starting off, building a capital campaign committee, what we did is our CEO engaged kind of our top 5 board members and began conversations with them on the idea of the capital campaign. Basic things on what was that going to look like, how we were going to accomplish that, and goal setting and all of those types of things. And so when he was identifying board members, we looked at board members that have leverage in the community. Can they go out? Can they have conversations with people? Are they respected in the community? And do they have personal capacity to support the campaign? So some of the examples, just a couple of examples. We have Scott is on our capital campaign committee, and he's a current board member, and he himself contributes to our annual fund on every year at a significant level. He was more than willing to step up and contribute financially to the campaign, but he also sits on various foundation boards in the community and has a lot of reach within the community, and so it was a great asset for us to have him as a key member on our capital campaign committee. So when you're looking at forming this committee, just those are a couple things to keep in mind. Another example of a board member that we have is Tim, and he's an architect. He's actually grew up going to the clubs, and he has designed previous clubs. He's designed a few of our standalone clubs and one of our school-based are one of our clubs that are attached to a school. And so he was just a key partner because he brought a totally different viewpoint on the campaign and the logistics and the operations side of it. And then another board member example is Todd, and he is a current board member. He'd been a past board president for several years, and he has a lot of budget expertise. So looking at the numbers and figuring out our goal and our costs, he brought that angle. And so we keep our capital campaign committee. We have six key board members. We have one community leader who is kind of an advisor to our committee, and then our CEO, our COO, and our Chief Development Officer. We all make up the staff side of the committee. And so when we got together, we were meeting every 2 weeks to keep things on track and flowing. And the first thing is, what challenges are we trying to solve? And for us, we really wanted to focus on eliminating transportation barriers. That's why we chose our club attached to a school model. And obviously our focus is a lot of youth that are living in poverty. That was a big challenge for our community. How can we be cost efficient to provide ways for kids to have after school care, education, fun, all of those kinds of things, quality learning opportunities, a hot meal. That was one of our main challenges we wanted to find a solution for. And then just that secure, safe environment. And so with those challenges, we were trying to provide a solution. And as we all know, the clubs provide those solutions. And so we had an easy time explaining how we were going to do that because we live that every day. But our next challenge was what was our reach going to look like? And so it's a little bit hard to kind of determine whether you choose, are we going to build one club or 3 clubs, or what's the dollar amount? And so that was a lot of discussion for us. And we determined that based on the relationships we had with one of the school districts we had already, it was going to be an easy fit to find 2 schools in areas that are completely underserved, not only by boys and girls clubs, but other after-school programs. And then we determined that we wanted to reach out to another school district. And how we went about that was we did a request for proposal process where we actually went out to the school districts and asked them to put together some piece of information. And it was basic information, free and reduced lunch rates, mobility rates, enrollment, attendance rates, but it was also what they could bring to the campaign for us. Was their board going to be supportive? Were they going to be engaged in the process? Did they think the community surrounding this potential new club would be supportive of having a club there? And through that process, we toured various schools, talked to school boards, and we found that this other school district that isn't typically known for having a lot of youth in poverty had a 40% free and reduced lunch rate and was having an influx in Syrian refugees, and we felt that we could provide a lot of assistance by putting a club in that school district. And they became a great partner because they actually were willing to transport kids from other schools within their district to this club. And so with all of that, we found that we were going to build 3 new clubs, and we had to determine a dollar goal around that. And so some of the key factors that we looked at are the project costs. What was it going to cost to build each one of the clubs? What size, what square footage was that going to be? In our project costs, we also included some upgrades to our existing clubs. We have some clubs where the buildings are extremely old and we have to update them every so often. So we put a line item in there as well that includes that. We also, something that is different that I had seen in the past that is actually working out really well for us is we put in a 7-year sliding operating reserve. And what that means is that we will be able to ramp up our fundraising, but we will have built-in operating money to draw off of while we are building that up. So we can draw off this money to operate the clubs as we ramp up our fundraising. And I can explain that a little bit more if anybody has specific questions about how we're doing that as well. And then we also have a 20% contingency. And then what we've also shown is the operational costs, how much it costs per club. And the benefit to us for this club attached to a school model is that we enter into a partnership with the school districts, and they actually provide all of the utilities, cleaning, the janitorial services, that kind of thing. So that cost is eliminated from us. And so we just have to operate the club, staff, supplies, that kind of thing. But something to also keep in mind as you're planning your capital campaigns, if you are going to be adding new clubs and things like that, is looking at your administrative support. That was a key factor for us. What did we need in development? What did we need operational-wise, finance-wise, to add that to make sure that we could sustain adding new employees on ×3 and keep up with what we were doing. So I have one of the handouts shows you a budget and talks all the way through this, so you'll be able to see more clearly how the budget lays out. The next thing that we had to determine was a timeline. So once we figured out our costs and which schools we were going to, we had to set out a timeline for the design and bidding process for the construction. And as you can see from the timeline on your screen, for the first example, we did a 10-month design and build process, which we're in the process of right now for our Omaha Public Schools Florence Elementary Club. And that club is going to cost us $3.1 million to build. And we are doing this design build phase for each one of them, and we've staggered them out. A lot of this conversation happens around with the architect, the school board, the school principals. We've had a lot of conversations, and this timeline has fluctuated throughout. So just keep that in mind when you're discussing this. It's been a lot of people, and it takes a lot of coordinating schedules to make this happen. So this was just an easy, simple way for us to plan it out. So when we are actually writing grants, a lot of the grants foundations are asking for a timeline like this. What is the structure going to look like? What's your rollout going to look like? And you can also see how this ties back into having an operating reserve as well. We will have 2 clubs opening around the school year of 2018, but then we won't have another one open until January of 2020, and then another one of July, August of 2020. So it's staggered, so that draw off the operating reserve will be a staggered process, which will also help us increase our fundraising as we go. So as you're looking at fundraising, your capital campaign committee will be key in this. We divided our group out into different segments. We had one that we called Friends of the Club, and that group was kind of our top 10 people. Who did we know that this group of 9 people could actually go into the community and have a conversation with? And a lot of these people we have conversations with them regularly. As we were going through the process before we actually asked them for money, we kind of threw some floaters out to them. What do you think if we built some more clubs? Would you be on board with that? Do you think the community would support it? And did kind of an informal feasibility study with these friends group. And with that, we got a lot of positive feedback. So we started to clearly identify this top list of donors who we were going to go to that were most likely going to be able to contribute a high dollar amount. And so we were able to secure them first. even before we went to our entire board. And it was just important to know when we went to the board that we have this community support. They wanted us to succeed, and they felt that we had the capacity and sustainability to do so. So we went to our friends group first. We secured several $1,000,000 that way, and we went to the board. And one of the requirements that we gave to the board is that we really needed 100% participation. We wanted everyone to contribute something personally. If they also had a business that they could support, that could support us as well, that'd be great. That was an addition, but we really wanted them to be invested in the campaign because they were going to be our advocates as well, as far as reaching out to people in the community as we were going through each phase. And once we finally get to that public phase, they're going to be the ones that are our champions out there saying, yes, they're doing great things, and the need is out there in the community. So we did that through various phone calls. We had committee members, our CEO, the CDO, call the board members specifically and kind of talk them through the campaign. We presented campaign materials at a couple board meetings before we actually asked them, and we were able to secure 100% participation in that way. Then foundations. We're in this process right now where we've identified kind of our top 6 key foundations that we know can give anywhere from $1 to $5 million each. And so this is a process that falls heavily on staff as far as writing the grant applications, getting all of that information put together. We also had our committee go out and talk to these foundations and kind of give them a heads up, get their feedback, that kind of thing, before we ever applied. And so that was really helpful. They knew what we were talking about when we were submitting the actual grant requests. And then even the board members would follow up after grant requests were submitted to see if there was any questions. So it was really a team effort there. So identifying kind of your top 6 or so foundations that you know can give a sizable amount that you are currently getting funding from is key in that level. Then we have a major gift level. And that's kind of anywhere from $10,000 on up. And this group is a large group for us. This includes some foundations that are smaller. This includes, annual donors that contribute at a smaller level. It's comprised of people that our board has connections to, that our committee has connections to, that either are current donors or may not even necessarily be current donors, but support big projects like this in the community. And so we're in the process right now. This is kind of where we're at. We're submitting some last grants to the foundations, and we're in the process of going through our major gift process and reaching out to those donors. And that process is taking quite a bit of time, just as you allocate kind of your fundraising strategies and timelines. Reaching out to those donors involves one-on-one conversations, face-to-face meetings, really explaining the campaign, a lot of things that we're all doing every day with our annual donors, but really having more than one conversation. It usually takes a couple conversations, so allocating the amount of time for that is really good. And then eventually, once we get to our goal of raising the majority of the money for the campaign, we will go public, and I'll get more into what will be, how that will look in the marketing section, but really doing groundbreaking ceremonies, emails, social media, that type of thing. So with the fundraising side of it, we came up with a letter of intent, and it looks like this. And I have this as an attachment for everyone, but this was really helpful in securing our friends of the club and our board of directors, and then we'll be using it with our major gifts. And so I have a sample of this. Feel free to use this and modify it as you need to, but basically it's pretty simple. It's the date, their intention of what they want to contribute, that they understand it's for the campaign, how they want that to look. Is it cash? Is it stock? And then how often Do they want to make that gift? Do they want it to do a one-time gift? They want to do it over several years? And then how often they want to have pledge reminders. That's been key for us too, is sending these pledge reminders to stay on that and not let that fall by the wayside with everything else that we all have going on. And then how do they want to be recognized within the campaign? Do they want their name published? Or do they want to remain anonymous? And then actually having them sign off on how that will look to them. So next, to kind of talk about how we actually managed all of these donors is a gift range chart. And this is just a very simplified version of what ours actually looks like. I just wanted to be able to get it all on one screen for you guys so you had a starting point. So you can see that we put kind of our friends of the club at the top, and we have it broken out by year. And then we have our foundations and our board of directors, major gifts, and we have totals, so we can see exactly how much money is coming from which group. As you get further into your campaign, and something that was a challenge for us, it kind of ties back into the timeline. When we are building our new clubs, we obviously have expenses going out. So the builder, the architect, the contractors, they all need to be paid. So something that if you guys have more questions on, I'd be happy to chat further with everybody offline. But looking at your cash flow process, so this gift range chart is our cash flow in, and then we had to account for our cash flow out and kind of match that up. And that's been an ongoing challenge for us. So we even, based on the letters of intent, can track when that money is coming in, at least at the basics. Is it going to come in the first 6 months of the year, second 6 months of the year? So you can also implement that into a gift range chart as well, because that way we would know how much is coming in and when, and then how much is going out. So this gift range chart can take on a whole nother level if you want to incorporate all of your cash flow processes with that. So next we'll just talk about marketing, because when you're asking board members and staff and your committee to go out and talk to various people that can support your campaign, you have to have some marketing materials. And so the first thing that we had to ask ourselves was, are we going to work with an outside creative company, or are we going to try to produce this in-house? And we actually, lesson learned, we actually started producing this in-house. And just to give you a little bit background on our development team here, we have a special events person, we have a donor relations person, a grant writer, and one marketing graphic designer. And it just became so overwhelming. It was taking over a lot of our time to write the piece that we were going to be using, to design the piece, and we weren't accomplishing everything we wanted to do on an annual basis as well. So our committee got together and formed a budget as far as what we were going to spend on marketing, and we chose to work with an outside creative company. And with that, this took a lot of meetings. This is a lot of work to manage that, in addition to everything else that goes along with the campaign. But in the long run, for us, it was really successful. The marketing piece that we ended up with worked out really well for us. And just to go through that process, whether you choose to do it in-house or use an outside company to help you with these materials, getting a statement of work put together so that your committee and your staff are all on the same page, and then that worked for us to be on the same page with our outside creative company. The outside creative company put a statement of work together for us, and it basically was kind of an overview of the project. They were hearing from 6 board members and 3 staff members on what we were all wanting. So to get that kind of narrowed down was very important. And then what they were going to deliver to us. So originally when we started, we thought we wanted this large brochure, this small brochure, a video, some basic campaign guidelines, all of these things. And that's what we started off with. we ended up narrowing it down to kind of a mid-sized brochure, which is one of the handouts you'll get to see. And we're still in the process of doing a video for our public phase. So we ended up kind of starting off big and going a little bit narrower as we talked through everything. And then we talked about themes. How did we want this to look? And we actually, we requested 2 themes from the marketing company to come and present to our committee. And they brought 3, which was even better. But how do we want this look and feel to go? And that's what your committee will really want to decide. What is going to be your focus, your message out there to the community? And you want to make sure that it is in every marketing piece that you use, everything you use with your public phase, and even just in the conversations that your committee and board members are having with donors in the as they meet one-on-one with everyone. So for us, the theme and concept of you've kind of seen, and you've seen this big ampersand sign throughout the presentation with the kids' faces on it. So for us, since we chose this club attached to a school model, we used the ampersand sign throughout, and it stemmed from boys and girls clubs. And so we said that our theme was going to be kind of this partnership, this relationship, clubs in schools, clubs in community, and it will, clubs in you was kind of our last walk away point, because we need everyone to support the campaign. So then also for the statement of work, going back to that, we have to have kind of investment, a timeline, exactly what their time frame is going to be to create these things, what the cost is going to be associated with that, any terms and conditions that they may have that we need to adhere to. And from experience, we had a great timeline figured out and was going to roll out really quickly, and I would say it probably took 3 times as long as we wanted it to, just because of our everyday workloads, and this was an extra piece for us, and then trying to get honed in on exactly what we were going to say in this brochure and how we were going to message it. So the second part, and actually creating what you're going to be using in these conversations, what your message you're going to put out there, we requested a creative brief, and this was really great because it really was like, what's the assignment? What are you asking the creative company to do? Or if you're doing it in-house, what do you need from your graphic designer and your marketing team? And so we really honed in on the concept that we have this $25 million goal. It's going to be going to support 3 new clubs, and this piece was going to capture that. This brochure we were going to use was capturing that. Something to ask yourself too as you're doing this is, who's your target audience? Who are we talking to? How do they currently think, feel, behave? And that's, we kind of divided it up to our affluent recurring donors. They often know something about our mission, something about what we do, maybe not necessarily all the details, but they're currently giving to us, and how we were going to message to them. And then we have kind of our community donors, small to mid-sized donors that may not know. That'd be more of like your public face. So as we were doing this, creating this brochure, we really focused on our affluent recurring donors. I would say that was probably about 75% of the people, kind of your friends of the club, your board members, some of your big major gifts, foundations. And then we walked through what obstacles we might have seen, what we needed to overcome or reach out to with the audience that we are highlighting. And so we just kind of talked through exactly what our message was going to be as far as the campaign. And since we already have one club attached to a school that is really successful, that's what we kind of honed in on. We didn't want to be in conversations with donors in the community like, well, how do you know this is going to work? We already knew it was going to work because we have our Mount View Club that is very successful, and so we actually included that in our brochure. We included success stories, as far as like our reading, how our reading rates are going up, our math rates are going up. We have a quote from the school principal. We show the characteristics of this school district versus this specific Mount View school where our club is attached, and talked through that. So that obstacle that was kind of in front of us, we were able to kind of redirect and have this really positive story come from that. And then we just wanted to talk through, what specific goals do we want to achieve with this brochure. And a lot of it was around the fundraising goal, that type of thing. Key messaging, just the single most important idea we needed to communicate. This was the hardest part for our committee to come to, as far as narrowing it down. We had all of these great ideas, but we ended up with an 8-page brochure, and we had to really hone in on it. And then we need to answer the question, why does our audience, the community, need our services? And so we were able to talk about, we wanted to make sure kind of mission, vision, ideas, all of that, not necessarily specifically, this is our mission statement, but that messaging was throughout our campaign, who we're going to reach, the benefits, the programming that the kids are going to have. And then we wanted to see, is there any competition out there? What else is happening in the community? And that's always something to be mindful of. For us, we entered into a capital campaign, and there were probably 25 other capital campaigns going on in the community. So that is something that we are still coming up against. There's so many other capital campaigns going on at one time. We decided that it was important for us, the time was now, and that we needed to do this, so that was our choice, but just something to be mindful of. Make sure you know what's going on in your own communities as you enter into a capital campaign. And then what tone did we want to have the marketing piece have? For us, we wanted it to be engaged, educational, moving, dynamic, powerful, bold, urgent, sustainable. Those were all the words we were putting together as we were creating our piece. And we wanted to make sure there was a call to action. And our key tagline is "The time is now," and then supporting the clubs. We had a list of mandatory items that we gave to the creative company that had to be in there. Of course, our Boys and Girls Club brand guidelines, our logo, we wanted our Mount View Club highlighted, some things like that. So figuring out exactly what you absolutely have to have and building from there. And deliverables, just reiterating again to make sure everyone's on the same page with what you're going to walk away from. Because when we started off, we had all these grand ideas of we were going to have all these different pieces, and we ended up narrowing it down to one solid brochure piece, and then we're going to do a video. And then a timeline again. Just really focusing on that. And as I said, that's easier said than done because we all have a lot of different things going on, and it makes it a little bit harder. And just this is one of the handouts, but just to kind of reiterate what I was talking through, this is the brochure that we ended up, the ampersand signed, clubs and schools, clubs and community. We had a statement, a quote from our CEO, some messaging from him. To go back to the beginning, it's the challenges, how we're going to solve them, how this clubs and school district partnership is going to really make a difference in our community. This is how our Mount View story came out. We have our principal, a quote from him. We show the characteristics of the schools, reading and math scores, how they're increasing. And then we highlighted our clubs and measurable progress. We highlighted the 3 new clubs that we are going to be building, and then some highlights. What does the district numbers look like versus the school's numbers look like, and how big the club's going to be, what we anticipate our average daily attendance to be, and we finally have our budget, and we highlighted each one of the new clubs. Something I didn't mention is our West Side Club. It's currently a club attached to a school that is in dire need of renovation, so we added that in there as well. So you'll see that as a line item, and we have upgrades to our existing clubs, and you'll see that sliding operating reserve line, contingency, and then all the operational costs that I had talked through as well. And then we just kind of have our clubs and you. That's kind of what we wanted to leave them with, because our whole messaging was about partnerships, and that the clubs and you tagline will be huge in our public phase as we move towards that. So with that, I guess if anyone has questions, I'm willing to take questions, and if there's anything that you want to know at another level, I can dive in deeper to any of that.
Okay, so you have 3 questions that popped up. Excuse me. The first one is, do you typically combine your annual giving campaign with your capital campaign?
No, we keep our annual campaign and our capital campaign completely separate, and we have, or at least we have thus far, but we don't have any intention of combining them. We really, our operating budget on an annual basis is increasing every year, as I'm sure everyone's is, and so we really have to focus in on our appeal that we do every year, our special events, the operating grants that we write, and really keep that all going separate of the campaign. So we don't combine them. We don't combine the messaging really either. We want to make sure that our donors know when we come to them for this capital campaign gift, it's a one-time stretch gift. Separate. We have some donors that will only fund capital, so this is a great opportunity to get in front of them, where I know that, as you do, and we do as well, have donors that will only fund operating, or they won't support capital, so we keep it separate.
Okay, and what are the frequency of the pledge reminders?
Sure, so we base that off of the letter of intent. So I have, currently I have a board member who wants a monthly statement. So we actually branded them with the ampersand sign and the look and feel with the blue and the yellow and all of that. And we email that to her. I do have a sample of what that looks like. If I can send it to you, Heather, and if you want to upload it to them. It's really, it just looks like an invoice, but it's all branded with the club's, the capital campaigns look and feel. We have some donors that want to be reminded once a year, but all of that is asked in the letter of intent. That's why from a management standpoint from our side, it's really a great tool to have those letter of intent signed from them.
Okay. Ryan said, I would love to hear more about the operating reserve. Is that in replacement of an endowment?
We went back and forth on if we were going to, add the endowment as part of the campaign, if we were going to keep that separate or include it, and so it kind of replaced the endowment piece for this campaign. We had a lot of conversations with our high-level donors, our committee, on soliciting donors for funds for the endowment, and it wasn't going over very well at the time. We had one foundation that was interested in helping us kind of spearhead a way to do that, but we did not get overwhelming support for that, so we did put the operating reserve in there instead. Now, a lot of people who are willing to support capital campaigns don't necessarily want to support operating. So with that, they may, and we are looking at this is probably going to end up happening to us, is that we have donors that will say it can go to everything else but that operating line. We were fortunate enough that Scott, one of the board members who's on the committee that I mentioned, he said, you can earmark my $1 million part of my gift, which $1 million of it towards operating. And so we were able to kind of put that in grant applications that we already have $1 million of the $4 million raised. It also is it's probably going to end up working to our benefit. We have a foundation that no longer supports capital. We had conversations with them. They were close to us. They said, nope, we're not going to do that. And so our board member, Tim, went back and said, well, would you consider supporting the operating reserve? And they're in the process of considering that right now. So it's actually a great way to reach out to donors that fund different types of things and include them in here.
Okay. Any chance for government as a source?
We haven't really looked into that as much for the capital campaign. We get some support on an annual basis, but we haven't needed to go there yet right now. We've had enough foundation and major gift support from our friends group and our board so that we haven't had to do that.
Okay. Ryan had a follow-up question. Have you seen a campaign do both ops reserve and endowment?
I haven't, not to say there isn't. I haven't. I've seen one or the other, but I haven't seen both. Um, but hey, if it might work for certain groups and communities, they might be all over that.
Okay. Question from Sarah. Can you tell us the duties of the campaign committee? Do you have a job description?
Ooh, that's a good question. We don't really have a job description, but their duties, okay, so to talk through their duties of the campaign committee, these people need to be, when your CEO is going to approach them, which I feel like is the best way, that's a great use of their time to engage these people. These have to be people in the community that have the time to spend to come and meet with you, because honestly we meet every other Tuesday for at least an hour and a half going through this as we were setting up. After a year of being in the planning phases, we now can meet once a month. So this group has to be committed to working with you. They do have to be able to have the capacity because it was so beneficial when they were out talking to kind of our close foundations, our friends of the board, that kind of thing. They can say, I've committed $1 million to this campaign, and I would really like to ask you to commit $1 million. They have that leverage and respect in the community. But as far as like specific duties, every meeting we walk away with who's going to reach out to who's going to talk to the school board, who's going to, we have Tim, our architect, who's going to work with him on exactly how these are going to lay out. So it's very specific duties to our campaign. But these people have to be willing and have the time to show up and make phone calls and be advocates, because if they say they're there and don't want to show up to a meeting, they're not going to be a resource for you at all. So you make sure that they have the time.
Okay. Are these clubs in areas where you already know donors?
Yes. So Boys and Girls Clubs of the Midlands covers Omaha, Nebraska, and Southwest Iowa. We currently have 9 clubs in Omaha, and we're adding 3 more in Omaha. So the majority of our donor base is right here. So yeah, we do know them.
How much did your top 10 give?
Ooh, that's a good question. Right now, it's a little more than 10 people. Our Friends of the Club started off as 10 people, and it grew a little bit. But our Friends of the Club block, I can tell you that, is probably a dozen or maybe gotten up to 15 people now, raised $11 million.
Okay. What was the overall timeline? How long between planning phase and public phase?
So we haven't even officially gotten to our major public phase. We had our first newspaper article come out, which ended up being probably a little bit too soon, but it was a great chance for us to get some great coverage on the front page of the paper. So we jumped on it. But we started planning our campaign, it was probably January of 2016, and we're just now even starting to think about a public phase. So I would say we'll do our first groundbreaking ceremony in June. So I would say it was a year and a half from start to even going public at all.
Okay. How old is your club?
We have been around for 55 years.
Okay. Are you using a consultant?
No, we are not. When we got together with our committee, that was one thing that they requested that we not do. So the only outsourcing we've done is on the marketing side to help us create the branding, which, you know, has I see both sides of it. Not having a consultant and being on this side, your CEO, your operations person, your chief development officer, it takes up a lot of their time. So for me, being the chief development officer, adding the campaign onto our regular duties, it just know going into it, it's extra work. But it's been great to be this engaged with our board and be involved and see all the steps of the campaign. It's really rewarding from this standpoint, but it is definitely a lot of work. So no, we did not do a consultant per the request of our board.
Okay, I think we have one more. How do you utilize social media to give updates on the campaign?
So we're in the process of determining all of that right now. So our goal is to send email updates, e-blasts, and social media updates, and that would just be kind of progress. So I'm really seeing that come in as right when we start the groundbreaking ceremonies. So that's going to be something that is going to fall on my staff, our graphic designer, marketing person, to take pictures of these new clubs as they're being built and get that messaging out there. And then we're going to have to also incorporate the fundraising message along with that. So we are going to be shooting a video to do a PSA. We have a partnership that gives us free airtime, so we just have to produce the piece, and we can do 30-second commercials on TV. So we're going to have to create our messaging and branding all around that. And we created a separate landing page on our website that is it's the Clubs in You. It's bgcomaha.org/clubs in you. And so it has our look and feel. Once we get the PSA done, we'll be putting it up there. It'll be a combination for social media specifically of our annual events, campaign, all of that, and then our capital campaign updates, and then capital campaign asks and asking people for support, that type of thing. I don't have a firm answer on exactly the timing of how that all spaces out because it's specific to what we have going on. We have 5 fundraising events a year, and so we have to manage it around all of that. So there's not a firm set exactly. We post every week or 3 times a week or anything like that because we have to balance it with what we have going on every day.
Okay. Did anyone else have any more questions? Okay, I think that might be it, Ashley. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time.
And just to reiterate, I will send out this presentation again along with her handouts. And Ashley, are you going to send me that last thing that you talked about so I can?
Yep, I will. Yep, I'll send you a sample of our invoice that we email out to everybody.
Okay, awesome.
Perfect. Thank you.